Imagine walking into a hospital for safety and realizing it's the most dangerous building in the entire city the moment the lights go out. That sounds dramatic, but every time a major blackout or war zone power cut hits a modern hospital, we see the same terrifying pattern. Machines go silent, staff are overwhelmed, and the building that was supposed to save lives starts quietly turning into a vertical mass grave. Let's walk through exactly how and why that happens, and what it would actually feel like to be inside a hospital as it turns into a death trap when the power goes out. First, picture this. You're in a crowded city. A disaster just hit. Maybe a hurricane, earthquake, or a bombing campaign. The power grid fails. Entire neighborhoods go dark. You think, if things get really bad, I'll go to the hospital. They have generators, they'll be fine. But here's the twist nobody wants to think about. Hospitals are some of the most electricity-hungry buildings on Earth. They all feed off a constant stream of power like a giant metal ICU patient. Pull the plug on that, and the countdown starts. In the first few seconds of a blackout, the hospital goes pitch black. Then, if you're lucky, the emergency generators kick in. Lights flicker back on in the hallways. Some operating rooms, staff exhale in relief for about 10 seconds. And then reality hits. Generators were never designed to run an entire hospital indefinitely. They're meant to buy time. Time to move patients. Time to improvise. Time to hope the grid comes back before that diesel tank runs dry. Now zoom in to the most fragile patients. Those on ventilators. If you've never seen a ventilator, imagine a machine that breathes for you, breath by breath, 24/7. No machine, no breath. Remove power, and for many ICU patients, it's like silently suffocating hundreds of people at once. Yes, many ventilators have internal batteries, but those are usually designed for short transfers, between rooms, in an ambulance, maybe a few hours at best. On paper, that sounds safe. More than enough time to move patients when a hospital's power fails. That sounds reassuring on paper. On a real chaotic ward? Not so much. Because during a major outage, elevators might be dead, so staff can't move ventilated patients between floors quickly. Generators might not reach every ward, or fail entirely if they weren't maintained or fueled properly. You might have more critical patients than you have outlets on the generator-fed circuits. So now staff are playing the darkest game imaginable. Who gets the plug? This is where hospitals start making battlefield decisions inside a building that was never meant to feel like a war zone. During the worst peaks of the pandemic, even with power working, doctors in some places were already being forced to choose who got a ventilator and who didn't when there weren't enough machines. Now imagine adding a power failure on top of that. You might have the ventilator, but not the electricity to run it. That's like having lifeboats on the Titanic, with no way to lower them into the water. In conflict zones and blockaded areas, it's even worse. When the only power plant runs out of fuel and the grid collapses, hospitals are warned they will turn into morgues. Newborns in incubators. This is where the phrase mass grave stops being a metaphor. Now let's talk about dialysis, the quiet killer most people forget. Dialysis is what keeps people with advanced kidney failure alive. It filters their blood when their kidneys can't. It's not optional. Miss enough sessions, and toxins build up until your body simply can't go on. Hemodialysis machines are hungry. They need power, water, and functioning infrastructure. When a large power outage hits, a significant chunk of dialysis centers get disrupted. Some manage by sending patients to other centers or bringing in emergency generators. Others just can't function normally. Imagine being one of those patients. You're supposed to get dialysis 3 times a week. The power fails. Your usual center is shut. Maybe another center miles away still has a generator, for now, and is taking in overflow. But roads are blocked. Fuel is scarce. Staff are stretched. You are now in a race against your own blood chemistry, and that race has a very clear deadline. Inside overwhelmed hospitals, that means dialysis patients cramming into the few working machines. Shortened sessions, rushed schedules, higher risk of complications. People literally being told, "We can't treat you today, not because medicine doesn't exist, but because electricity doesn't." Again, the hospital is still standing. The doctors are still there. The hospital becomes a vertical storage of the living and the dead. Outside the hospital walls, something else is happening. People at home who depend on electricity for survival. In past crises, ambulance services have been flooded with calls from people whose life-supporting equipment was failing because their homes lost power. Many of them rush to hospitals to recharge machines or get emergency oxygen. Some emergency rooms have seen dozens of people show up just to power their medical devices. So you get this sudden surge, a wave of fragile patients pouring into a hospital that's already struggling on generator power. The building becomes Noah's Ark for the sick. But the Ark itself is taking on water. Now layer on conflict or total blockade. In places under siege, where fuel is cut off and power plants are shut down, hospitals don't just flirt with disaster. They move in with it. As electricity disappears, incubators flicker off one by one. Dialysis stops, and hospitals truly start risking turning into morgues. This is not a movie. This is newborns dying because their incubators are just plastic boxes without power. And when airstrikes or shelling continue while hospitals are barely functioning, the morgues overflow. Families sometimes have no safe place to bury their dead. Temporary pits are dug near or even within hospital grounds. That's how hospitals literally physically start to resemble mass graves. The line between place of healing and place of burial blurs. You might be thinking, but aren't hospitals required to have backup systems for all this? They are, up to a point. Most modern hospitals do have generators. Some hemodialysis centers maintain on-site generators or have pre-arranged backup centers to receive patients if power fails. That kind of planning can allow care to continue even during big outages. But here's the brutal reality. Backup systems are designed for short-term crises, not weeks-long blackouts or sieges. Generators can fail, run out of fuel, or simply not cover every part of the hospital, can make it impossible to reach everyone in time. And millions of people assume hospital backup power means indestructible safety net. It doesn't. It's a timer. Once that timer runs down, you're not in a hospital anymore. Even in normal disasters, overwhelmed hospitals can run out of morgue space. During huge outbreaks, some cities had to bring in refrigerated trucks to store the dead. Now combine that with power failures that shut down refrigeration units, elevators that can't move bodies to the morgue level, ongoing attacks or outages that prevent rapid burial or transfer. Bodies begin to accumulate where people die: wards, hallways, side rooms. In some war-hit areas, hospital courtyards have been turned into places of hasty burial because it's simply too dangerous or impossible to move the dead elsewhere. That's when the phrase "hospitals becoming mass graves" stops being a warning and becomes a literal description. Let's be honest, most of us never think this far ahead. We trust that if anything goes terribly wrong, the hospital will be our safety net. And individually, there's only so much you can do about the fragility of an entire electrical and medical system. You can't single-handedly harden a grid, secure fuel lines, or rewrite war policy. But understanding how thin that margin really is changes how you see the world. You realize that a hospital is only as strong as the infrastructure feeding it. Electricity isn't just convenience, it is life support. When power disappears, healthcare doesn't gradually decline. For some people, it just stops. And in the worst crises, the place you run to for survival can become the building where people are quietly triaged, left behind, and buried. And here's the scary part most people overlook. The danger isn't just inside the hospital. It's the chaos outside crashing into it. When a city loses power, everything that supports a hospital starts to crack at the same time. Traffic lights go dead, fuel stations shut down, communication networks fail. That means ambulances stuck in gridlock, families unable to call for help, and staff who can't even reach the hospital to start their shift. The building might still be standing, but the ecosystem that feeds it is collapsing in real time. Inside, nurses who have already worked 12 hours are suddenly being asked to stay for 24. Doctors are forced to improvise manual ventilation using hand-pumped bags for patients who would normally be on machines, their arms burning as the minutes turn into hours. Paper charts pile up because digital systems are offline. Lab results slow to a crawl or stop entirely. Every tiny delay nudges someone closer to a line they can't come back from. And remember, fear spreads faster than any infection. Families crowd corridors, begging for updates, arguing over who should be seen first. Security is stretched thin. Rumors fly. The generator is about to fail. They're choosing who to save. In that atmosphere, the hospital stops feeling like an organized medical center and starts feeling like a panicked ship in the dark, with far too many people and not nearly enough lifeboats. So, what do you do with this knowledge? You can't prevent hurricanes or wars or grid failures by yourself, but you can stop pretending that the hospital will always save me is a guaranteed plan. You can recognize that if you or someone you love depends on electricity-based medical equipment, you're living on a hidden second-by-second contract with the power grid. Understand that even the best hospital can be pushed to the edge where doctors are forced to decide who lives and who dies, not based on skill, but on sockets. Pay attention when you hear warnings about fuel blockades, system collapse, and failing infrastructure, because behind those headlines are real wards, real nurses, real families watching the monitors go dark. The dark truth is this: when the lights go out and they don't come back, the hospital doesn't magically rise above the chaos. It becomes part of it. The building that symbolizes hope becomes a pressure cooker of impossible choices, silent machines, trapped patients, and eventually, rows of bodies with nowhere to go. And that's why, in the worst blackouts and blockades, hospitals don't just struggle. They become death traps. If you want more brutally honest breakdowns like this, the hidden failures of systems you're counting on and what they really mean for your survival, make sure you stick around, subscribe, and share this with someone who still thinks, "I'll just go to the hospital" is a plan.